My name is Martin Strickland. I'm the Associate Director of Public Programs at YBCA, and I'm one of the co-curators of Bay Area Now 8. Something that we have recently started to do is a little project called Artist to Artist, which happens on our free third Thursday. It's an opportunity for the artists in our exhibitions to get to know one another and talk to one another without myself or other sort of curatorial voices. So I want to welcome Rhonda Holberton and Charlie Leese.
Thank you, Martin, and thank you, Yerba, Buena, just in general for this opportunity. So this is my piece here. It's a virtual reality Reiki, essentially. There's a server inside of the sculpture. You can log on and release negative energy into the server. So there's actually a mechanical transference of your muscular energy into digital energy, into magic energy that goes through the air and then lives in the server. A Reiki healer performs a healing service on this server, and then I use motion capture data from that in the VR here. So you go in VR and you see the hands moving over your body.
That's my sculpture back there. The actual structure that's green, and that's called internal structure number 2. And then attached to the structure, we have those violet screens. Those are called surrogate FaceTime. So they're meant to reference anything that you're sort of inputting your attention into. And so the general shape of them are concave and convex. So part of them are coming out at you and part of them are going in, visually referencing when you input your vision into something that's going to occupy your attention, it's also outputting as well. Below each post that those are attached to are armrest tongue is the title. And those are meant to reference some sort of seat or bench or an armrest that's void of the seat below it. They're also meant to sort of add this anthropomorphic side of it where it starts to become very bodily or, everything is really high gloss and wet. So it has this sort of almost sci-fi type kind of feel to it. I also run a project space called Cloaca, and we've shown Rhonda before there. It just really fascinates me how she kind of comes up with an idea and then executes it. So I wanted to know about that general process from the idea to finishing.
The way that I go about these projects, I let one project kind of lead to the next. And there's a certain amount of technological research. So I use a project to teach myself, for instance, how do you build a VR project? How do you deploy it to these standalone devices? How do you build a server? I think for this project, it was born out of a body of research that was way more speculative than I normally tend to go, and had been feeling anxiety about the future, right? These kind of apocalyptic visions. And so what do you do when you're worried about the future? You go see a psychic. She was actually able to identify some long-term illnesses that I actually had gone undiagnosed up until that point. So then that kind of like doubled back on my belief system, and I was forced to reconcile some things that I wasn't terribly comfortable with. So thinking a lot about Reiki here, where like I can take my cell phone and I believe in a bad signal from my cell phone, right? Like I'll like hold it up to magic places to try to get a better signal. And I'm like, yeah, I totally believe in that. That's a very legitimate thing to do. Whereas like if I'm told that I have like blocked energy in my body, I'm like, that's crazy, right? And so like, but why, what are the belief systems that support one thing versus the other? And so I was trying to smash them into the same place. So all the while I'm doing research into, how to set up a independent IP address. At the same time, I'm also then doing research into like bodily healing and energy healing and Reiki. But it also kind of segues into some of your work. Do you think a lot about the kind of like absent body in these, or does the viewer kind of complete that for you?
Well, with this specific work, it's really activated when people are moving through it. It sort of opens up that barrier to really want to interact with it. Demarcated spaces are designed to induce some sort of other action, whether it's like a waiting room or a restaurant at the airport where you have these like little areas that they give you your iPad, they give you your seat, they give you, your everything you need, your charge station. And so you kind of plop down and like take hold and ownership of that space for some time. It's really homogenized and really, only a transit type space.
Your pieces exist in this kind of state of quivery between things, and clearly that's intentional as a design aspect. So do you want to talk a little bit about how you misuse welding, for instance, to produce things that aren't supposed to, that you make metal feel like the body, or you make metal feel like ceramic?
The actual kind of lumpy texture on it is just utilizing what the welder does, which is, this is a MIG welder, so it's using electricity to create an arc. It's essentially kind of often described as like a hot glue gun with metal. I was just utilizing what it was good at and using that to create texture over the whole thing. So it has this sort of feeling of, almost like it's melting or come apart, but also held rigidly in place. And I like that sort of visual contradiction that's happening with that process. Lastly, for our last question, I want to know what Rhonda's up to next.
I'm actually not entirely sure. So the research part of the practice that kind of like comes and strikes almost like electricity, it hasn't done that yet. And so where I am actually in is the kind of technical research. So I immerse myself in kind of what is right now is training an adversarial network. Give it a bunch of images of like pornography and then ask it to create a building, right? Kind of doing it wrong. And so I'm in conversation with an AI right now, and I'm not sure where that conversation's going. How about you, Charlie?
I'm working on a project for SF MoMA Open Space. They have a new platform within Open Space called Project Space, which are free downloadable artwork. And I'm making one that's going to be a free downloadable video of a sculpture that I'm temporarily installing in a kind of a remote location on the San Francisco Bay, right on the waterfront. The video is really activating this post-industrial part of San Francisco. So look out for that.
Thanks, guys.